Hello, hello, and welcome to CatalystMLM. I'm Brian Switchko, and today on the show we have Marsha Wright. Marsha came from an extremely difficult and abusive home life. She was a troublemaker in high school, dropout, and ended up becoming a world-renowned TV business expert and serial entrepreneur. She's an international #1 best-selling author, syndicated columnist with a loyal fan base worldwide. She's an entrepreneur, an investor, philanthropist, and strategic alliance. #1 in strategic alliances. She's awesome, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's absolutely lovely to be with you. So I'm excited about sharing some ideas and my experiences, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And I was going through and I have always loved your content and have actually recently come across it, but just been absorbing more and more. And your energy is just infectious. I mean, that's the only word that I can use is infectious. And the laugh too, the laugh. So I mean,
remembers my laugh. I've had that for a while. It's cool. I'm keeping it.
You practice it in the mirror in the mornings.
Being down to earth and approachable and genuine is one of the best things that you can be. And when you find that part of you, it's one of the things that will attract people to you. So if you have that attractive spirit, then let that shine. I think it's important to care and actually really care, and I really do care. So try to be as down to earth as I can. Just be me.
Yeah, and that's and you. I mean, that's you now, and you have a really interesting background and a really interesting story. I mean, back to when you were a baby. It's a mix of both the home situation, but also your personal drives. I mean, tell me more about your beginnings.
Beginnings were, I would say, quite humble in that my family life, as far as back as I can remember, I only have 2 memories of my father in the household. And one was with him beating somebody up who offered me an ice cream. And the other was incredibly odd because he went to prison when I was 5 years old. So the other memory that I have was just really, really odd behavior from him. And by the time I was 5, he was in prison, and my mom raised us, myself and my brother and sister, and I'm the baby of the family. So she really did the best that she could do with us. And I think even through those difficult circumstances, she did an amazing job. And I think I was just a little bit of a handful. So even by the time I was quite advanced in school, very intelligent, but not scholastic. I didn't like books. And, I think the first time I read a whole book cover to cover was when I was 20, just before I was 20. So I didn't like finishing things off, and I was intelligent and witty and knowledgeable. And even in school, I know the American system works very different, but when I was 12-ish, something like that, they were saying to me that I actually should be a year ahead or 2 years ahead. I could be doing my exams that I should be doing at 16, if only I would apply myself.
Oh, I've heard that so many times.
I wasn't good at applying myself. I was good at being the class joker.
Yeah.
And,
well, you were applying yourself to being the class joker.
Exactamundo.
It's hard work. You know who else applied themselves to being the class joker? Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs,
yeah.
Mark Cuban. I think there's quite a few people. So, but yeah, it's so that beginning was there. And I had a very difficult beginning, and I was in children's homes, which would be AKA group homes, and just had so many different odd experiences and dangerous experiences for a young girl to be going through. And the amount of times I nearly died and was murdered and all this kind of stuff, just really, really random, horrible things that just wouldn't point to the person that you see today and the successes that I've accomplished today. But I always say I had a praying grandmother, and so I'm always proud about the fact that eventually I came good and got myself settled down and started my first business. I started even at 7 years old. I kind of guess that was my first start of entrepreneurialism.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, because even at 7, I was doing I was going to the shop around the corner from the house on my walk to school with my brother, and the shop was called Jimmy's, and uh, we'd buy sweets in the big packets. And I don't know if you have this in the States, but they have these little paper bags, small little paper bags for penny sweets or 1 cent sweets. And we'd be bagging them up on the way to school, and then get to the school playground and sell them at lunchtime. And this was back in the day when you couldn't buy sweets in school. You know, it was like coloured custard and stuff like that for dessert. It was horrible. So we had a good monopoly on the playground. And then I was about 13 when I started my next little business, which was doing mixtapes, which I would record off the radio, and then at the end I'd like fade the music down and then cross in with the next song, and then I'd sell those. That was my little business. And then the third part was graphic design, and I've always loved graphic design, so I was actually doing that quite a bit as well from the time I was 13. And at 17 I launched my first business with my own office. And even with that business, the great thing about that was I always knew how to get jobs. That was one thing I was really, really, really good at. I was very good at I could go to an interview and I'd get almost every job I applied for. So when I started thinking, what could I do as my own business, because I need to make some money, I said, okay, I'll do CVs for people. And I guess that was my first foray into helping others.
Yeah, and so you, I think in that business, you were helping people get jobs, and your success rate in helping them get a job was ridiculously high.
Yeah, exactly. It was really fun to mimic that. Can you see the sun? It's cool.
You're glowing. You're radiant.
But yeah, so yeah, it was really quite awesome to do that, because it was very difficult to duplicate myself. That was the thing that was really impossible for me. I knew how to articulate what needed to be articulated for somebody. You know, I am 18-year-old, 17-year-old, 18-year-olds running my own little business. I've got my own little office, and I've got clients who are 40 and 50 years old and 30 years old, and you know, and I'm the one who's articulating on paper their years of experience, and then they're going out, and in 40 days, it's like 99% of the people who were my clients were actually securing the job they wanted in 40 days or less. So I knew I was onto something, but I just didn't realize quite how amazing that skill was.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a ton of gems within your whole experience there. But I mean, going back to the beginning, I mean, when you were individually wrapping up, you know, candy, I love calling them sweets. When you were doing that, did you have like any vision for the future? Did you say you wanted to be an entrepreneur? Like, what was your first memory of like future oriented thinking this is what you wanted to do?
Okay, my first thinking, because back then I would like wash cars and everything, and I'd charge what I needed to make up the money I needed. So if I needed 86 pence or 86 cents to go and buy something at the shop, I would charge you 86 cents to wash your car. I didn't think profit. But I think I remember the first time I thought to myself, I really want to do that. I watched Baby Boom, which is, I think it's Diane, gosh, what's her surname? It's not Sawyer. I can't remember her name right now, but it's a film that she was this businesswoman, and I think her sister had passed away, leaving her the sole guardian for her daughter. And eventually, you know, trying to run that and run corporate life, she eventually lost her job, left out of that, started doing making jams and things like that. People loved it because the baby loved it, and then people loved it. And then she started a business, became a big business. The corporate people came knocking back saying, we'd love to take a bit of your business and do business with you. And she strung them along. She said, no, don't want to do business with you, thank you very much. And I remember watching that, going, I want to do that. Yep. So that was my first memory. Not even sure when that was. I just know that was my first memory of going, I'd like to do that. I'd like to make a business, be successful in business.
Right. And I mean, I'm sure at that point you didn't understand like residual income or passive, like that concept, but you just knew that further from where you were.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've always had this dreamer mentality, and I've always looked at something that wasn't and tried to see what could happen. And, you know, the whole concept of residual income, I did get introduced to that concept at about 16 when had been approached by a friend from church who was actually involved in an MLM. And of course, at 16, I couldn't sign up for anything like that. But I was with somebody who could sign up for it, and I remember the CEO of the company, the American company, coming over. He met me and he said, "I will pay for you to do everything if you'll be involved in this. I'll pay for you to come out to America. I'll pay for you to do this." And we started working on the business, and I was doing presentations, like little mini presentations and stuff, and just kind of getting my feet wet. It wasn't quite for me. I think at that point in my life, it was nothing wrong with the opportunity, but it was really great from a confidence standpoint for somebody to look at me at that age and say, I have confidence in you, because I had such an age complex.
Yeah.
Because I always looked older than my age, but then when people found out how old I was, they wouldn't take me seriously. So I always had to kind of dress up more and all this kind of stuff just to fit in. And, you know, being fitting in doesn't suit me as a person. I always just am very, very different. So, but yeah, the whole idea of residual income and passive income and being able to do something, I was luckily introduced to that concept when I was 16 years old. So I knew it was something that I wanted to do and wanted to build.
Yeah. And I think people within the MLM industry sometimes kind of they forget that residual income exists outside of MLM. And so the ways to build it outside of MLM, the methods, the tools, the tactics, that all works within MLM. So, you know, that advice and that experience, it really crosses over. And it's important to remember that, because I think that the advice that you have and the insight is really powerful there.
Yeah, totally.
So you mentioned on your website, and I just loved this like tidbit, was that you have an insatiable appetite for significance and success.
Yeah.
Like that, like at an early age, like just felt it. So what did that feel like in the highs when you were just like, you knew what you were gonna be successful. You didn't know how, you didn't know when, you didn't know in what way, but you knew that you were. How did that feel when you were excited and positive? And how did that feel to you when it was the opposite, when you were, you know, encountering major difficulties?
Yeah, I think one of the things, Brian, that I think is very difficult is that we are raised thinking that adults know everything. And then we become adults and then we feel lost because we don't know everything. So then that actually causes us to give ourselves a hard time, much longer, for many years longer than we really ought to. And so the hard times, I think, were harder because I had this part in my head going, you shouldn't be going through this. You should know better. You should do this. And it's all this condemnation. And I always say it's a voice in my head. Everybody has the voice. And I call it the voice Doug. Okay. And sometimes Doug.
Okay, Doug.
Doug. Sorry about any Dougs who hear it, but that's the name of the voice. And sometimes you have to say, shut up, Doug, so that you can just get back to the middle, because for me, in those negative times, I have to remember that wallowing will not actually solve my problem. I'm very logical. I love my husband to bits. We get on very, very, very well. We work together. We have done since we started our business life. But I love the fact that he says it this way: you think like a guy. So I'm very, like, I've got a lot more of the logical element. And so if I feel something, I can actually, if I own it, I can switch it off and say, I don't have time to feel like that. Maybe I feel like that in 6 months' time, but I don't have time. I got to focus on doing what I got to do. And so I think that during the tough times, it's actually about having the resolve to get your head in the right space. If your head's in the right space, you'll attract the right people. You can go out, you can meet people, you can make anything happen, but your head has to be in the right place. You're dead in the water if your brain's not thinking right. In terms of the positive times, I've had times where I was absolutely shocked that I was quite as invincible in areas that I didn't, I wasn't the beautiful girl at school. I used to hang around the popular girl, you know what I mean? And I became that, I became successful and I became interesting and people wanted to hear what I had to say. And that's really, really great for somebody who was told by teachers, you'll be nothing, and you know, you're not going to become somebody, and you're a waste of space, and we're going to kick you out of the schools and all this kind of stuff. So for me, a lot of the time, the great times have been when I have surprised myself, and I don't actually compete with others. I always compete with the view of who I believe I can become. And I think that that's a really good thing to do. Never, ever compare yourself with others. The more you do that, the worse you are for yourself, because you really, truly do not know what it takes to be that human being and to go through what that human being does. And sometimes you want something and you find out that it's not quite as it seems.
Yeah, and you have to readjust your vision.
Exactly.
So, I mean, you talked about, I mean, think like a guy, and I always kind of boil it down to, you know, you've got emotion and you've got logic. And
Right.
a lot of times people say, you know, you need to be logical about your emotion. If you're upset, if you're distraught, you need to be logical about it and say, well, you know, I can't do anything about that right now, so I need to focus on what I can.
Yeah.
But the opposite is also true, because I you know, different conversations, people talk about being emotional about your logic. So saying, okay, well, if I do this and I work really hard at it for 5 years, then it's going to, you know, mean great success. So you get excited about it, because without the excitement, you can't push through. So
Right.
how would you find that balance? Do you find yourself switching back and forth on different issues, or do you think you find yourself more on the logic side?
I think that this comes down to amygdala control. The amygdala is a part of the brain that controls your reactions in everything from sweaty palms, fast heartbeat. Basically, it's the fear control in your head. Being an entrepreneur, building any sort of business takes a great deal of bravery. And it takes a little bit of crazy. And it takes quite a lot of crazy. And it takes an awful lot of believing what others don't believe. But you have to be careful how you straddle that line, because it can be absolute confidence. But when you're watching X Factor or American Idol, and you're watching somebody and they're wailing like a cat who's been drowned, you should say, you will not keep that dream alive. Kill it, kill the dream. And I think what has grounded me and what's also lifted me is actually being able to have an amazing team. So it's by having an amazing team that you can bounce ideas. You're still the leader of that team, but you can bounce ideas and you can look for ideas. And, you know, I will end up saying to somebody, you know, maybe either a receptionist in my company or a client who I haven't spoken to for a long time, wherever source, and I'll say, what do you think? Because by doing that, you get to broaden your horizons. I do that with my mentors who are, you know, I'm doing all right, but, you know, I'm not worth half a billion.
Yeah.
I've got mentors who fall into that category. And so, you know, when you're having people who actually are feeding into you, and, you know, there's people who are coming up underneath you who believe in you so much because their dreams are hedged to your current success. Yeah. And then there are people who are ahead of you. And I always remember when when people believe in me, who matter to me, who I look up to, when they believe in me, I could go for 2 years on one thing that somebody said to me, just one little line somebody said to me. And I remember one of my mentors said to me, it's inexcusable that you're not a billionaire yet. And he meant it, and he has achieved that. So he was very serious with me. And that messed with my head. You know, it's like, okay, I knew that was possible, but now you're like calling me to account, like you're calling me out for it, you know? And because legacy is so important to me, the money is not important. It's good to be able to achieve a goal and say, gosh, great, I did this and I can take care of this or that, take care of family or do things for legacy. And you know, I like shoes. Behind my Mac right now is an actual cupboard. It's not cupboard, what is it? It's a case, a book, a display case full of stiletto heels. I love shoes, okay? So that's my main indulgence. But, you know, beside that, I relatively live fairly similar to how I've lived for the last 10 years. Right. And my mentality is in the right space, but I always am trying to work to become the Marsha I am up here. Right. And I know there's something inside that's strong. So for me, amygdala control, once I understood it, And I would recommend everybody look up the amygdala and control the bugger, which is spelled Amygdala, amygdala.
Your amygdala is not telling you how to spell amygdala. That's not what
right,
it's for.
No, exactly. So I don't know. Google it, damn it.
Yeah, I'll post a link below. But I love that because I'm very much like a brain science person. So it's like both sides. You know, if you know how you're working, then you can kind of, it's like the owner's manual.
The success really, to me, success is actually really being able to successfully handle yourself. Right. You are the worst enemy that you will ever have. And you are the best champion you could ever have. And then again, you're the worst enemy. So it's like you're always fighting against this part of you. And I think one of the things that is really important, has definitely from my side, that has helped me immensely, is being really conscious of the way that I think and the way that I process information. Okay, I give me a book to read, give me a physical book to read. If you do not like me, send me a physical book. Because I have learned that reading a physical book for me doesn't work. So I don't fight that now. Now I listen to audiobooks. I have an audible.com registration, like a membership.
Right.
And I can listen to 3 books a day. And when I used to think, oh, I'm so dumb because I don't, read books, now I can get through 10 books in a week.
That's awesome.
So I learn what is me. And then I work with that because it's something that's made me up. I don't try to be like other people. And the less you try to be like other people and you try to work with what your strengths are, because it's something that you are capable of doing that other people are terribly, terribly deficient in. And when you try to be like somebody else, you just don't need to be it that way. And I'm always talking, I appear in the newspapers, magazines, television, all this kind of stuff. And I'm always talking about strategic alliances. Utilize those relationships that enable you to work with others who can do things that you can't within your own team, whether it's an MLM business or a corporate or a small business, a venture that you're a partner in, whatever it is. You need to look at things that you're great at and own that and dominate that and kill it on that, and stop trying to be something that you're not mentally or in any other way. It doesn't mean that you don't push your boundaries, but just be intelligent with what you want to spend your time mastering.
Right. And so many people often point out the importance and the power of figuring out what your strengths are, figuring out what your weaknesses are. And I think that the term is leveraging away your weaknesses. And getting other people who are better at, whatever it may be that you're not good at. If it's sales, leverage away sales and you focus on running the business, or the opposite. And you talked about it before, and I'll kind of break it down into 2 pieces, is if you look at kind of like a railroad track, there's people behind you on the track and ahead of you on the track. And there's also different railroad tracks. So if someone's end goal is to, get a job at a marketing firm, well, then the CEO of a marketing company will be ahead of them on that track. And then there'll be, people in college for marketing behind them on that track. So you're on, let's call it, just to simplify it, an entrepreneurial track. And you said that you have people ahead of you, or above you, and people that are behind you who are following you and connecting to your success. So focusing on ahead of the track, when was the first, like, what was the progression of you finding your first mentor and understanding the value of that and being able to connect with the power of it?
Big question. Okay, so I pull mentors from very odd sources, which is why it's kind of a big question for me. And I have different mentors who have different disciplines and knowledge and experience. And so it's all a bit, it's a bit different for me. So I kind of like this question because I do so many interviews and I don't get questions like this all the time. So I like it. But in terms of drawing strength from mentors, and I think, like many people, my mentors give me a window into what's possible. And I've been very blessed to mentor thousands of people. and have loved every moment of it. It's the thing that I love the most. And so the value of mentorship, I'm a big advocate for that, because I built a very successful mentorship business. And I love that whole concept of being able to use mentors and be able to grow using mentors. And I think no matter where people are ahead of you, on that train track, you say, on that railroad track, it's wherever people are, if they can add value to you, if they, you know, use mentors in your life who are where you want to be. And you don't have to have a one size fits all. In fact, I actually think it's more valuable for you to have different people who have different disciplines, as opposed to saying, this is my one person who can give me who is the font of all knowledge. As I said earlier on, humans believe that, you know, certainly as children, we grow up believing that we should all have all the answers, and it really isn't that way. So even your own mentors will have their own proclivities, and they'll have their own things that make them, you know, their own weaknesses and things that they're maybe not so great at. And so it's really important to make sure you vary that knowledge. One of the cases that I remember was a mentor that I had in my early business, and I would say he was really instrumental for me in just understanding the difference between push and pull marketing, and you know, being able to build my credibility, because I was one of those people, I wanted to be really down low. You know, I didn't want anybody to know me. I wanted to like make millions
behind the camera instead of in front of it.
Right, and that didn't work out. But it's good. It's all right. I don't mind being a bit more well known now. But at the time, it used to freak me out, actually. And but when one of my early mentors, he was really brilliant for me, probably the first year to 2 years, and it was a really informal relationship. And then it got to a point where I realized I outgrew him, and I didn't outgrow him because of my income level. It wasn't just because of that. It was because I realized that the knowledge I had was such that I didn't need him as much. And so that's why I think it's really important. And also he would contradict himself. So I'd ask for advice today, and then in 2 weeks' time, I'd say the same thing. I'd go, but didn't you just say don't do that? And I'm actually one of those people. I think if you're going to be a great mentee, act on what your mentor says. The thing that drives me bananas, I truly, truly care what happens in the lives of my mentees. I call them my client family. And some of my mentees have become wonderful friends, amazing friends. They've been to my home here in Spain, and just really, really great people. And I spend time with great people. I love human relationships. And the key thing for me is that for the people who I get on really well with and who do really well, they actually action what is said very quickly. So if you don't know what you're doing, then try not to spend as much time trying to figure out if what your mentor said makes sense. If you know they're skilled in that, run with it and trust it. And until you have other proof that it won't work, then run with it and trust it and work with it and add your own stuff that makes up your own philosophy, and think about those people who you're going to be helping 2 years from now. But it's really important to be a mentee who actually listens. That's a really valuable trait, to use 2 ears and 1 mouth, and then all your hands and feet for action immediately.
I like that addendum to that one. And a lot of times I think it's reasonable to say that pretty much everyone who has ever been in a mentorship position in any capacity, that the pet peeve is people who ask for advice, they listen to it, and they don't act on it.
Right.
And, you know, it's like making an investment that doesn't pay off, because the payoff is to see someone else be successful. And,
Exactly.
And not having that happen because, you know, they had to take out the trash first or something like that. It's
right.
not great.
You know, my goose died, you know, okay.
Did you say goose?
Yeah, well, it might be their goose died. It's all these silly...
Wait, people in Spain have pet geese?
No, I'm saying superfluous excuses that mean nothing.
Okay. All right, good example. I was so confused for a second.
Being random.
Someone out there with a pet goose is offended.
Goose are geese, okay? But yeah, I was actually also gonna say, you kill me, Brian. I was actually also gonna say that there is nothing more inspiring for me than when I speak to one of my mentors and they give me this insane goal that's based on what I want to accomplish, but they kind of take it to another level. And then I go do it, and I come back and I have that meeting, and I'll say, they'll go, so what's happened? And I goes, well, I did what you said. And they go, really? You know, it's because it's refreshing. And the truth of the matter is, when you have accomplished a certain level, people really can't pay for you. The people who need it can't. The people who need it and who earnestly want it may not have the means to pay what your IP, what your intellectual property is worth. And so I think it's valuable to, you know, to truly give the best you can to your mentor. The best thing that anybody can give to me who I give advice to is come back with a success story. That's all I want.
That's awesome.
You know, because if I turn around and give them the bill of what my high-end clients, I deal with a lot of work with high net worth individuals. If I give you know, somebody who's starting up and say to them, well, yeah, you want to work with me, it starts from $150,000. Can't really work with that. But if I give you a tip, please run with it. You know, do what you want to do, grow, develop. There's amazing ways that you can get support and get advice, and just really, really use it and read voraciously. That's all I ask.
Yeah, and I love that word. And you, I mean, you talk about that on your website. You have, I mean, you write constantly. You have tons of content. The insights that you're sharing here, there's books, there's just a plethora of stuff online and everywhere. And people often get stuck in that kind of educational trap where they're continually in school and never leave to apply it.
Right.
So kind of going to the other side, I mean, you talked about it a little bit, but when you're mentoring people, either in person or just someone in your audience who's listening and actively applying that, how do you do that? How do you, I mean, back to what you originally said in the beginning, duplication, because that's huge in multi-level marketing, is that you have to duplicate your efforts.
Right.
How do you do that?
Duplicating your efforts, it really comes down to thinking about the systems and what you do. I'm very obsessed with systems. If I have to do it more, if I have to do it more than once, then I don't want to do it twice. I'll work hard and I'll make a system. And if it takes me 3 days to get what's in my head down, so that myself or my team can really put it in this way that somebody else coming in can do it, whether that's video, whether it's audio, whatever. And I'm a talker, so I can, you know, I prefer to talk, but obviously in that process of writing my book so quickly, which we can go into, I'm sure, it's that whole aspect of getting things down to be able to duplicate your efforts is really awesome. And I think people absorb information differently, and you have to be able to understand that if you want to build a team, you have to allow for the fact that people absorb information differently. I've got one of my business partners in a new company we've just taken a stake in. He gets a lot of information, then he needs no conversation for a day. He doesn't want to talk. And it's totally fine because he needs to process.
Right.
I'm okay with that. It doesn't bother me. That's his process. He gets his process. Other people, they need to see it. They need to go through it. They need to ask questions. They need to be active. They're going to be in between analytical and all this kind. You just have to understand how different people in your team absorb information. And I actually encourage people to do a couple of tests with folks that they just start working with. And we do a learning styles test. This is with everything from our high-end clients, and I'm talking clients who are investing significant sums of money, right through to our, you know, lower-end mentees. I still have mentorship programs that I don't have to manage on a day-to-day basis, but I'm still involved in some of the elements because I love that whole pouring out situation, like what we're doing here. I love doing this. So but no matter what level, we do something called a learning styles questionnaire, which you can get those for free online. And then there's a website called 123 Test, and they do a DISC test and a personality test, a work values test, sorry. And those three tests together help you understand the person who is before you. And I think when people are having new members of their team, you have to understand how their brain works so that you can make what you're saying and how you're working with them applicable to them, how their actual, how they deal with and process information. And that will help you to build a much more solid team and help them to take responsibility for what they need to do their part to build the bigger picture. I also explain the concepts to my team. We have a full induction when people come into our companies, and we explain the concept called the garden patch. And the garden patch concept is, if you can imagine a yard, and that yard is split up into one 1 foot. You guys speak in feet, right?
Yes.
Right, cool.
It doesn't make sense, but we do.
I don't want to say meters, because then that's really going to screw with you. So if you can imagine a square foot, right, about this big,
yep.
On the ground, each, like you do if you're developing property, you know, the plot lines. And every employee or every member of your team has a garden patch.
Okay.
And when everybody in the team is doing their part, they are watering and they are caring for their garden patch. You as one person cannot take care of the whole garden. But if everybody takes care of their patch, everything's fine. So I explain that concept and everybody really gets it, and they understand the depth of, if they're not dealing with their patch, it's going to affect other patches. It's not just going to affect one other person's patch, it's going to affect the entire garden. And so I think when you're having a team, it's the cohesiveness of a team and having everybody assigned to doing something that adds value, not just to themselves, because the natural man is a self-saboteur. So you have to make allowances for that in your systems, right, and in your team building. The natural man is a self-saboteur. He doesn't understand himself. He doesn't understand how long things take to do. He's not committed. He procrastinates. He makes excuses for mediocrity. And so that's why it's so difficult, even in MLM and any other business. This is the most difficult area, is to actually find valuable talent. But also talent comes from what you can develop. And, you know, when I had, you know, a social worker who spent time with me and developed me, if I didn't have that social worker, I always remember his name, Soye Briggs, and I found him about a couple of years ago on Facebook, and I told him all the things I was doing, and he sent me a message back on Facebook, and he says, knowing everything that you're doing has made my entire career worthwhile.
You're gonna make me cry.
It's so it's like, I just felt like I knew that it had made, you know, you're talking about a 30-year career, and me, little old me, has made his entire career worthwhile.
Yeah. And you know that he means it. If anyone's ever known a teacher, social worker, anyone in human services, you know that he means it.
Yeah, 100%. And it just, wow, I kept it. And it's, you know, it's the same thing. You have a responsibility as a leader to lead, and to, instead of just, you know, don't just point the finger, take responsibility as a leader and lead, and lead with gumption, and lead with by example. And, you know, no man left down, you know, no man left behind, you know. And I think if people have that spirit and people realize they care, there'll be a big difference in the kind of team that you build up, rather than just having people and you're trying to build your numbers and then you're kind of getting them in on the front end, but they're kind of falling off on the back end. Yeah. It's, you know, human development. I wrote a book on this, actually. I'm planning to release it next year. But the whole element of human development and project management, etc., these are skills that we don't learn in school, and they're essential skills to building a business. And whether it's an MLM business or otherwise, building a business is it takes a real effort. So a lot more has to go into it, I think, from a lot of people for them to get the full value.
Yeah. And I mean, personal development is internal, but I think human development's a great phraseology just in general, because it, you know, it's personal development for other people, but you can't personally develop people in your team. You have to help them experience that. And and I think people, the term recipe for success, you know, like what's the recipe for success? People often think that it's, you know, you do this, you do that, and so on and so forth. But I think the way that you explained what you just did is very brilliant, because, you know, it is about duplication, but it is about, you know, finding what people's strengths are and letting them do that, and having different pieces to the puzzle. You can't have 1,000 of the same puzzle piece, or you'll never put the puzzle together. So it's always a balance with everything, you know, and there's different pieces. In terms of like a recipe, it's, you know, like having different ingredients, and you you have to combine them in different ways and have different amounts and cook them in different ways and put them in at different times, and it's always going to change. And people kind of forget that. They think that it's just very rigid of, you know, even peanut butter and jelly, there's 1,000 different ways to make it. So, I mean, the question here, say it again.
I like P&J.
Fluffernutter, bananas, Nutella, UK Nutella, yeah. So the question here is, someone once said to me, and I always kind of kept it at the back of my mind, is the words that are most cliche are often the most true. So what would you say to that? Because I mean, I hear like a lot of things that you're saying that, I mean, people, very, very successful billionaire entrepreneurs say, and people who I believe will be very successful billionaire entrepreneurs, like, and you're saying the same thing and you're fighting through it and you're partnering with those people. Where do you get that? How do you see the power in that?
The power in looking through
those cliche advice, metaphors, quotes.
Yeah. I hate cliches. I really do. But inspirational words empower. And so I think that that's good. But here's the thing. Again, the fallacy is that success is supposed to be easy. Overnight successes that you hear about are actually the product of 20 years of damn hard work. Yeah. So escape the fallacy and absorb the reality that true success is multifaceted. If you are looking at financial success doesn't come from how much money you make. It comes from how much you retain. So if you do not have skills of retention, you will never be wealthy. If you're not educating yourself to have those skills, you will never be wealthy. And you will not build a legacy that can take care of your children and that allow them to have the mentality of being first generation wealth creators as well. In terms of being able to escape that cliche and escape the trickery that you see. I mean, I always watch these. I actually find great interest in documentaries. I enjoy documentaries. I'm an absolute Netflix nut. I love Netflix.
My Netflix queue understands me.
Oh my gosh, me too. Like, I put something on my Facebook and I said something like, "Dear Netflix, I'm so sorry that I've strayed away from you and I decided to watch something that you thought would be a 2 out of 5. I'll never make such a mistake again. You know what's right for me. If you don't like Netflix, you won't get that joke. If you do like Netflix, you know exactly what I mean."
I think someone once said it was like, my Netflix understands me, but my TiVo just yeah, I forget. But it's like, it's either on or it's not.
Yeah, I agree with you. And onto the Netflix thing, the documentaries, I love watching that. And I always watch these documentaries that are about the rich and famous and stuff. And I love watching the peer into the into these lifestyles of the rich and famous. But I also hate this part that frames it very salacious, with this very condescending, those are the rich folks, it's all right for them, da da da. And the truth of the matter is, this is something somebody said to me in my teens and it's stuck with me ever since. Bill Gates has the exact same amount of hours in a day as you do. Mm-hmm. Point blank. Anything that you are not able to do is not it's a matter of lack of imagination. I never had money when I got started. In fact, I had something like maybe $700, which I got from an employer who owed me money, and I had to take them to a tribunal, like a employment arbitration, to argue for them to give me my $700. And when I got my $700, I gave some of it to charity. I go to church, so I gave some of it to my church. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to start my own little business. And I started my first business with £270, maybe $500. So it doesn't take a lot. It takes a hell of a lot of imagination and lots of bravery to make it work. That's the reality of it. And so, I just think people have to be really realistic with how long it takes to be successful and just be really committed. There's a great book by Jim Collins called God, my brain's just gone dead. Good to Great. It's called Good to Great. Yeah. One of my favorite books, which is why I was a bit miffed that my brain just went dead. But yeah, it's called Good to Great, and it actually really talks about how to build an amazing organization that already has modicums of being a good business, and then turning it into a great business, and looking at the what makes it great and what makes it fantastic, etc. And so I strongly recommend for folks to get access to that book. I, of course, listened to it on audio, which I loved, but definitely get the physical book if that's your thing, or Kindle. And the thing that he talks about in there is about being really focused on what you're passionate about, but what you know, your hedgehog, what you can do that best in the world that no one else can do. And if that what you've chosen is an MLM business, or you've chosen your own venture, or you've chosen a company to partner with that you're not even the principal of, the face of the company, whatever it is, be the best you can be, and own that. And I think that the success that happens from consistency is so much more powerful than the flittering around trying to look for the next best thing. You know, Marissa Mayer got some advice from a friend where he said to her, look, it looks to me that you've got a lot of great good choices here to make a choice from, but the one you pick is the one that's going to be great, because you're going to make it great. So just make it great, stick to it, be consistent, and just run with it, and really run it until the wheels run off. As long as you know that whoever's ahead of you is not talking bull, just really run it until the wheels fall off.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that advice is awesome, and it just made me smile, because the choice that's best is the one that you pick. And I actually have a holiday card my grandparents sent me, and it was there's something really special about this card, the person reading it. And I was just like, it's so cheesy, but it's adorable, and I'm using it on someone else. And you know, that mentality, it's about the mindset and that personal growth and applying it, and the struggle, the art of the struggle. And you keep mentioning personal development, and I know that you listed on your website that you wake up at 3:53 a.m. every morning. And I used to wake up at 4. Now I wake up at 6, but I go to bed later. But that, you know, that consistency.
You should be going to bed later and waking up earlier. What are you talking about? I go to bed later.
You know what? Tomorrow I'll wake up at 5, and I'm gonna wake up and be like, Marsha.
5. And I'm up at 3 o'clock UK time. I'm up at 4 o'clock my time. You know, minutes to 4. I'm up and I'm at it. And you know, to be honest with you, I wake up and sometimes I'm like, I really, really want to sleep some more.
Yeah,
I really do. I really, really, really do. And then I'll just say to myself, what's more important? A couple more hours in the bed, or doing the things that I need to do and doing things that I love and having quiet time to do it. I always thought I was a nighttime person, Brian. My mum's a nighttime person, and I thought I was a nighttime person until I started realizing that, you know, getting the strength out of that first part of the morning, it's such a powerful thing.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah, I recommend it. And you look at the most successful people in the world, you know, example, like him or loathe him, Donald Trump gets 4 hours of sleep a night. You know, a lot of the successful...
Is that why his hair always looks like that?
He has interesting hair, but he always says it's his hair. So take him at his word.
So I mean, what is your advice? What's your actionable advice that someone could use? You know, specifically if their current personality, their current their situation is not yet the one that's in their head, their vision of themselves. And they're struggling. I mean, like, I know you still are today, because your vision of who you want to be is evolving, and everybody's is. So what would you say to someone who's maybe seeing that that's a little distant, and they need to be able to connect with it, or find a way to get there more quickly, or understand that it will take more time?
My thing is, obviously, if you've seen that where you're at now isn't where you want to be, first thing is to actually identify where you truly want to be, not just because you've said this is what other people do and that's what you believe other people have or whatever because they're more successful, blah, blah, blah. Get rid of the fallacy, get in touch with what you actually truly want for the right reasons. And then once you have that, that's not the easy bit, but it's the easy bit. The second part of that is now to actually look at what is stopping you and identify by bullet points with the shortest amount of words in a sentence exactly what is preventing you being able to do that. And once you identify it, it might be that you say, well, money's a factor. I'm a single parent, or I've, just any number of excuses or reasons. Some may be very valid, some may be a bit weak. No matter what it is, just identify some really, these reasons, and then you have to put two things to these reasons to counteract them. Number one, you have to use strategic alliances. It is the single most powerful resource available to man to be able to work strategically with others who have knowledge, exposure, access, etc., and build relationships with those people, not where you're just coming and saying, give me, give me, give me. You're coming and saying, this is what I have to offer. And can we do something together? Let's see what we can come up with. That's the fastest way to change your fortunes. You look at my book, The Secret Collaborative Economy, more clients, more exposure, more profit, faster. And I wrote that book in 5 days. And that was the first draft. The rest of the editing, the strategic partners I worked with, all of it was all organized. It went from June the 9th. In the evening, I had the idea, went on Facebook and said, who can interview me for this book? And got somebody agreed that night, started working with him on the Monday, started writing the book the Monday. Friday, with 1 minute to spare, you'll see it on my Facebook, updated, I did it, finished, it's all done, everything's all in one document, it's all there, I've done it. And from the time it went from an idea in my head, or from the first time I started writing on the 10th of June to the time it actually became a #1 bestseller, was 36 days. The book was released on July the 16th, and we used strategic alliances to promote the book, which went to 1.1 million people with 0 advertising budget.
That's awesome.
All using strategic alliances. So I would say when you identify what's wrong and how you can't reach it, and it's a good thing to do. There are major corporations who do the same thing. This is a big problem we've got. When people start realizing that, firms from the Wall Street Journal through to Cisco and all these other companies, every company has problems. Your problems are just more pronounced because they hurt you.
Right.
Doesn't mean that other people don't have problems. So it's important to identify, okay, this is what I need. So I believe strategic alliances, and that's obviously what I detailed in my book, is the strongest tool that you can use to actually get where you want to be, and work it until the wheels fall off. Anything that you look at and you go, I should be here by now, and all of that is unnecessary and unhelpful. Any of that energy is not going to help you get where you want to be. So get rid of it. Focus on what you can do. Focus on what you know that will help you get where you want to be. And that's where your head has to be at. Anything less than that is just not going to take you to where you want to be. So the biggest takeaway would be think very seriously about how you can leverage strategic relationships, everything from growing your team right through to building relationships with others who have exposure in areas that you don't. Utilize that as your way to catapult yourself to the foreground. Leverage your way to the top, as you said.
Love it. Thank you so much. That's awesome. And it's actionable too. It's very, it's not easy, but it's simple. And thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to have links to your book and all of your resources and all the fun stuff we talked about and referenced below. And look forward to having more from you soon. Yeah, amygdala. The amygdala is below.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Take care, Brian.